Today in the comments, we're talking about malls and commerce, and I want to hear what your favorite store in the mall was, either growing up or as a teenager, and bonus points if you can connect it to horror in some way, horror books, horror movies. Hello, I'm Adam Caesar. This is Project Black T-Shirt, the channel where we take a new or a reissue horror movie or horror movies and then pair them with a reading recommendation that you will like if you enjoy those movies. I am the author of Clown in the Cornfield, which won the Bram Stoker Award for Young Adult Novel a year or two ago, and the adult novels Video Night, Summer Job, Exponential, Tribesman, Zero Lives Remaining, and the upcoming Clown in the Cornfield 2, Friendo Lives, which I would very, very much appreciate you pre-ordering in hardcover right now. I'll put links down in the description. And recently, for a project, for something that I can't really talk about, but my work on it is mostly done, I've been thinking about mall horror. I've been thinking about horror set in shopping malls, particularly horror movies, and how much I love that setting. There's kind of no more American setting than a shopping mall, if you think about it. And I haven't done my history. I don't know where malls were invented. Someone's going to say in the comments that malls were invented in Scotland or something like that, and I'm going to look like a fool. But to me, there's no more American setting than malls, and I love 80s horror films. So most of the movies we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about 5 horror movies, either set entirely or set partially in malls. Most of the movies I'm going to talk about are set in the 80s. And then, as you could probably guess from this video title, and from just being a horror fan, the number one movie is kind of the only answer when it comes to what are your favorite horror movies set in the mall. Not to say that if you have a different answer, your answer's wrong, but your answer's kind of wrong if this number one movie is not your favorite movie. And then as a special bonus, months and months ago, probably a year ago now, I'd actually visited this mall that is featured so heavily in this movie and shot a little footage there, but we'll get to that in a minute. But that's at the end of the video. If you want to just see that part, just skip forward to the end. I'll put chapter stops and all this. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about 5 horror movies set in full or part in malls. I tried not to do every single most popular, most obvious answer, so there are probably going to be some things left off the list. I prioritized things that I owned on Blu-ray. If you have other ones that you really think I should see that I may not have seen, please sound off in the comments and tell me. But we are going to start with number 5. The real reason I'm making this video, because I just watched this, I wanted to review it, I wanted to talk about it, but it got me all thinking about all the other mall horror I've watched and revisited recently to do that project that I was talking about that hopefully will be announced sometime soon. We're going to start off with number 5 on this list, Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge. This is a movie from 1989, the tail end of the 80s, the last gasp of the 80s. This is one of the only movies on this list that isn't like a kind of childhood favorite, a kind of nostalgic favorite. I feel like if I had seen this movie when I was a kid, and I was kind of the perfect age for it, if I had seen this movie when I was a kid, I probably would have absolutely loved it. And I still kind of like it. I still think it's really good. And as far as footage of 80s malls, especially LA malls, the Sherman Oaks Galleria, which is where a lot of these movies are shot, it really can't be beat. The Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge. Very simply, as you could probably guess from the title, a retelling of the Phantom of the Opera story set in an American mall. It's set in a Midwood Mall in the fictitious town of Midwood, which I don't even think they really tell us where it's set, but from flashback sequences you can see that there are like Arizona pennants on the wall, so I think it's supposed to be set in Arizona, even though it is clearly the Sherman Oaks Galleria. This is a movie directed by Richard Friedman. Richard Friedman, we talked about 2 of his movies on the channel. We talked about Scared Stiff, and we talked about Doom Asylum. And putting this up against those other 2, I'd probably rank it in the middle. I'd probably put it above Doom Asylum for me, and I'd probably put it below Scared Stiff. All 3 have been released, weirdly enough, by Arrow Video. This is a slasher, kinda, because it is a slasher in the sense that there are many killings and killing set pieces, and there is a masked killer, the titular Eric, who is wearing his kind of Andrew Lloyd Webber face mask, which is very like chic looking, is actually a mannequin. You see him make the mask in the beginning. The story starts 1 year after the events that Eric is getting his revenge for. His girlfriend takes a job at the mall, this mall that had used land that Eric and his family had been living on, that all these different people in the suburbs had been living on and were displaced from their homes because the greedy developers who were creating this mall needed that land. A really, really convoluted story about who's to blame and who killed Eric and how he's going to get his titular revenge. But all you really have to know is that it's the Phantom of the Opera in a mall, which means that it's a weird slasher in that for over 2/3 of the film, the slasher is the good guy. He's not killing the hero teens of the movie, which is odd because there are like 4 of them, and minor spoilers, but most of them, all of them, make it out of this movie okay. But he is killing random people around the mall who have otherwise wronged him, are complicit in his death, or who are messing with this girlfriend who thinks he's dead, and then trying to protect her. The tone of this is all over the place. They talk about in the special features how the original 2 writers that wrote the spec script that it's based on were kind of summarily booted from the project once producers and money people took over and got the script. They hired a new guy to come in. He completely rewrote it. His dictate was to slash the budget in half to make this movie a much cheaper movie before even the director Richard Freeman was brought in. And according to them, and you can watch them on these special features, according to them, he really, quote unquote, destroyed their script that they seemingly were very proud of, that was seemingly much more serious, much more of an actual horror movie. And what we get with Phantom of the Mall is this hodgepodge where some scenes it seems to be taking itself seriously, and some scenes it seems to be doing the complete opposite of that. It's not quite a parody. It's not quite Wacko or Return to Horror High or something like that, or a parody like that. But it is silly. And it's not silly. It's not even as silly as Doom Asylum, the movie by Richard Freeman, where a girl gets trash compacted into a little cube, a giant spring hanging out of it. There's nothing quite that silly, but things are played slightly heightened, slightly exaggerated, and that's kind of just due to the budget and the mishmash of tonal weirdness and producer meddling and stuff like that. But all that said, I really, really enjoyed this movie. I really, really enjoyed the complete package. I think this is a disc that if you even have a passing interest in mall horror or slashers, it's well worth picking up. This is Arrow's standard edition of this. The special edition of this, which was like, came with a little booklet and came with a poster and came with, I think it might even come with an extra disc. It might have come with an extra disc with a TV edit. All or most of the alternate deleted scenes from the TV edit are here as deleted scenes on this disc, but I think the other disc had like the actual integral, all the scenes added that they shot for TV. But I kind of wish I'd gotten that version. I kind of wish I'd gotten that limited edition version. It sold out really quickly for some reason. I think it was probably like supply chain issues or something like that. Or Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge has a lot more fans than I thought it did. But the standard edition, which is the only one you can kind of get right now, I'll put the links down below, like I put the links for everything. Buy from our friends at Diabolic DVD. I'll put the links to Amazon down there too. A very, very surprisingly enjoyable movie and a great disc. That making of documentary is nearly an hour long. The Vandals, the punk band The Vandals, did the theme song, the ending theme of this movie, which is kind of worth the price of admission alone. They make a joke about Morgan Fairchild's breasts in the song. But if you're interested in that song or you're interested in punk, there's a whole nother like little 20-minute discussion with Joe Escalante of the Vandals. And he not only talked about how they made the song, but he talks about kind of the Vandals' careers pre this, working with Penelope Spheris, and then what the band was up to after this. So a nice little encapsulation. A really stacked release for a movie that you kind of would imagine may not get it, but boy, do you see a lot of great footage of late 80s malls in this movie, which is kind of what you're here for, or at least if you're weirdo like me, that's what you're here for. Number 4 on this list, Night of the Comet. Night of the Comet, it would maybe be higher if they spent more time in a mall. But this is Catherine Mary Stewart and Kelly Maroney in the kind of ultimate zombie comedy meets Valley Girl survival story. I really, really like this movie. I know this movie has its fans. I know this movie has its detractors, but I think it's really fun, a really light movie. I don't really hear it talked about as a kind of gateway horror movie, but because it's pretty substantially minimal on sex and violence, would kind of be a good gateway horror movie. I haven't seen it in a few months, but I'm trying to think. I don't want to show your kids something awful, but this kind of feels to me like if a kid's getting into horror and probably can't handle, say, Dawn of the Dead or something a little bit more extreme, this might be one to point them towards once they're done with Ernest Scared Stupid. I really like this movie. A good portion of it takes place at the Sherman Oaks Galleria, you guessed it, but this one's at least set in LA. It makes sense that they're there. Number 3 on my list is a complete cheat because it's actually 2 movies, but these movies don't substantially take place in a mall, and one of them is not even a horror movie, but I did want to talk about them. Trancers, the original Trancers, Charles Band's original Trancers, it has horror elements. It has kind of sci-fi elements to it too, mostly sci-fi elements, and there is a time travel element to it too. But if you haven't seen the original Trancers with Tim Thomerson, there is a great scene where he fights a Trancer mall Santa in a kind of great early 80s looking mall. And my other not real pick for number 3 is Mausoleum, which Mausoleum, hey, doesn't this take place in a mausoleum? No, but there's a great section of it that takes place in a mall. Both of these movies I've talked about in other videos, so I'm not going to spend a whole ton of time talking about them. But boy, oh boy, the Sherman Oaks death, which is incredibly similar to one of the deaths in Phantom of the Mall, almost exactly. Someone falling off a very high thing onto a pointy thing in almost the exact place that the later film shoots. This is 1982, so this is the beginning of the 80s, and it would make a great bookend with Phantom of the Mall, which is the end of the 80s. You can just see how the Sherman Oaks Galleria changed, what stores are different. They all look different. The styling of it is different. It's about a woman who gets possessed, starts killing people with her mind. Her breasts become monsters. You heard me right. This is a fantastic, fantastic early 80s horror movie. I'll link the video where I talk more in full about it. But there's a mall scene in here that is just beautiful. Number 2 on my list, and there aren't that many great mall-based horror movies, so you probably could have guessed what number 2 and number 1 are. But number 2 is Chopping Mall, the great Jim Wynorski's classic of cinema, Chopping Mall. There are no humanoid killers in this movie. Instead, this is the story of a mall that puts in a state-of-the-art robot security team, these killbots, and they patrol the mall. A group of kids breaks into the mall to kind of hang out overnight, sex, drugs, party, and all that. And the robots malfunction. They become killer security guard robots. And the teens, one of whom is Kelly Maroney, and one of whom is Barbara Crampton of Reanimator fame, they have to fight back against these robots. There's exploding heads. There's Dick Miller gets cartoon electrocuted. A fantastic movie. And Jim Wynorski, we've talked about Return of the Swamp Thing on here. There's a pretty good documentary about him called Popatopolis, which is kind of a warts and all documentary. You see him later in his career. I don't know that it's streaming anywhere. I have the DVD somewhere. I have the DVD in storage somewhere. I don't know if that movie's still around, but worth tracking down Popatopolis if you are a fan of Chopping Mall or Wynorski's less reputable work. And the number 1 movie on this list, not much of a secret, Dawn of the Dead. This is the second sight 4K Ultra HD edition of Dawn of the Dead. Next to like Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, this is probably the movie I own the most, and I'm probably not the only horror fan who can say that because these movies have been reissued a lot. There's been different special editions of them. Recently, semi-recently, Dawn of the Dead has there was a real early, I think Anchor Bay Blu-ray release of it. And then their rights got really, really tricky, and the rights holders got really tricky to work with, supposedly. And this movie hasn't been around for a while, has been streaming, but if you can swing it and if you can find a copy, this is like 4 or 5 discs. This is 4 discs. But if you can swing it, this is actually not the most special edition they released of this. There was a limited edition that included the novelization and stuff like that, but I'd already had the novelization, so I just went with the step down, quote unquote, standard edition, which is still 4 discs. This has the UHD, Blu-ray, all the different cuts. It has the Argento cut. It has the extended cut, which is what they showed at Cannes. It has Document of the Dead, which is kind of very famous making of this movie, and then it has a bunch of other special features. If you are American like me, you're gonna need a region-free player to play any of the discs that aren't the UHD, that aren't the 4K. If you're saying, Adam, you didn't talk about what Dawn of the Dead's about, Dawn of the Dead is about zombies in a mall. It is the sequel to Night of the Living Dead. It is George A. Romero's, in my opinion, greatest masterpiece, and he's made many masterpieces. But you can listen to a lot smarter people talk about what Dawn of the Dead's about. But if you haven't seen it, you got to see it. It's fantastic. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. And so much so that I've had this footage for a while. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I was going to do a review of Dawn of the Dead, the Second Sight edition, and I was kind of like, why do that? There's so many other people talking about that release, so many other people talking about that disc. When am I going to use this footage? I didn't know. A year ago, probably about a year ago, maybe even over a year ago, my brother-in-law and I, we were going to get vaccinated. This was when the early days of the vaccine rolling out, and everyone in Pennsylvania trying to get it, finding it harder to do and finding it more in demand in Philadelphia. He had this great idea. Hey, there's a college not far from here, and not far from here is like an hour and a half, 2-hour drive from us. He was like, they can give it to us right now. Let's just go get it. So it was kind of an impulsive thing. We hopped in the car, we went and got it. And then you realize, oh, to get your second dose, you gotta drive back out there again. And by the time the 2 weeks had elapsed with the side of it, the vaccine was kind of everywhere. We could have walked into any CVS and gotten it. But we were like, oh, they really have our paperwork there. We should probably go back to the same place. I looked on the map and realized that there was an opportunity here. Ever since moving to Philadelphia, I've wanted to go to the Monroeville Mall outside of Pittsburgh in Monroeville, PA. But being a New Yorker, I had no idea about Pennsylvania geography. I kind of imagined, oh, it's in the same state. It must be close. No, it's like almost 4 hours away from here, Monroeville. But we had this thing we had to go do, and we had to drive 2+ hours away to go get the second shot. And I was like, hey, hear me out. Why don't we drive an hour and change more and go see the Monroeville Mall? He was like, well, I see the Monroeville Mall. I showed my brother-in-law the movie. He was all in. And this is the footage. We shot a few things. So when you see us wearing masks and stuff like that, remember that it was the like height of the pandemic. When you see everyone wearing masks, it's a pretty empty mall. We were walking around it early in the morning. I will play that footage now. I'll like edit it together, make it look nice. I haven't even looked at it in a year since shooting it, but I'll put that together. And then after that, I will end this video the way we always end these videos, where I will recommend a book. So if you want to skip to the book recommendation, if you don't care to see me walking around in a semi-empty mall, I understand. We're in a small tucked away annex of the Monroeville Mall near the Macy's, where they have this home of the original Dawn of the Dead sign. And they have all this great picture of Mr. Romero. And then they have this picture that's subtitled Cast Members from Dawn of the Dead, 1978. But if you'll see, that's not cast members at all. That's Romero with producer and director himself, Dario Argento, on the set of the film. So very cool. This week's book recommendation, it is not about a shopping mall, but it's about something that's really, really close to a shopping mall. This week's book recommendation is Bentley Little's The Store. I have had little on my authors that I have to read because my friends love them, because my friends are obsessed with him list for a very long time before I had actually broken down and read the story. I'd even had had maybe multiple copies of the paperback. I just hadn't done it because I was like, oh, this is a pretty long book. The things I hear about Little are mixed, and that he's an acquired taste, and that I may not like it. But I finally read The Store not all that long ago. Fantastic. Just one of the oddest, weirdest books. He has one of the oddest, weirdest voices in that kind of post-King horror boom. The premise, really quickly, a town where they kind of put in bids, the mayor and the people who run the town kind of bend over backwards, the town council kind of bend over backwards to get the store. This is the name of the store, is The Store, a department store to build in their town. It is likened to a Walmart. It is likened to a Target. Little kind of name checks these places, but The Store is so much more sinister than that. To tell you why or how is almost a spoiler, because it really does slow play the weirdness and what is wrong with the store. But these locations are kind of popping up all over the country. We follow the protagonist's daughters, the protagonist who's trying to stop the store, who's kind of been against the store from the beginning. We follow his daughters. They each get a job at the store. The store has some really weird corporate culture and really weird practices for training and stuff like that. This is it does delve into somewhat extreme territory, but again, to tell you what would be a spoiler. So if you're the kind of person that is sensitive to those things, you probably know to look this stuff up before you go read it. For the rest of you who are like me and don't care and just want to read something messed up, go get The Store. If you've been dragging your feet like I have, very, very enjoyable. I think I have multiple paperback copies of them, but I couldn't find either to hold up during this video, so I've probably been putting a graphic up here. But The Store, great. The irony of all ironies is this is a book that kind of has a cult following that's been reprinted again and again and again. And not too long ago, I remember going to a Target and it was sitting there on the shelves, a book that is kind of very much anti-big box store, anti-department store, quite literally implies that they are evil and destroying the country, sold at a Target is a kind of great irony that I think even Little would appreciate. Go check out these movies. Bask in the glow of the fluorescent lights of the Sherman Oaks Galleria of the Monroeville Mall. Enjoy that. When you're done, make sure to stop by the B. Dalton and the Walden Books. Neither of those things exist yet, but go to Books A Million, go to Barnes & Noble, go to your local indie bookseller, go to Amazon, go to the links down in the description, buy yourself a copy of Clown in a Cornfield, pre-order Clown in the Cornfield 2, and buy all my other books, buy all my audio books, listen to those while you're driving to the mall, while you're walking around the mall. Go enjoy, and I will talk to you next time when we'll talk more movies, more books. Bye-bye.